Pucks with Haggs is brought to you by the Game Time app.
Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, a proud member of the CLNS Media Network. The show is brought to you by Game Time, the best ticket app to get all of your seats for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., etc. Download the Game Time app today and use the code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. Game Time, last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. I am your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. Get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write for the Boston Sports Journal, so go to bostonsportsjournal.com. Read all my Bruins columns there, as well as the weekly Q&A I do with the fans. We answer some of those questions also on this podcast. I believe this is the 185th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you for listening in. With me, per usual, my longtime friend and colleague, Mick Colageo. Mick, please tell everybody where they can find your work.
I got a blog I call Rink Wrap, and I write the seasonal issues of the hockey news. And I was actually supposed to go on the radio with Pete Shepard this morning, but his show did not air today. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I anticipate hearing back from him shortly.
There you go. All right. As always, give Pete the Meat Shepherd my best, and we're going to have him on with you, Mick, at some point. I know fans in Boston love to hear Pete's thoughts on the Bruins, and he's a very passionate Bruins guy. So we will definitely have him on at some point. All right. Let's just get into it, Mick. I mean, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, we just gave some love to Game Time, so we can get right into it.
Game Time.
There you go. What I think the big news this week is the firing, resigning, whatever you want to call it.
Parting of
ways between Mike Sullivan and the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I'll read this tweet from DJ Gregor on Twitter. Welcome back. Welcome home, Sully. The fact that this guy is available is a gift from the hockey gods, almost like when Bill Belichick came to the Pats in 2000. No-brainer of the century right there. And I will preface this by saying I've been hearing for weeks chatter about Mike Sullivan, even when he was still with the Penguins under their employ, under contract, because I think he had a long ways to go still on his contract with the Penguins.
1 out of 3.
Yeah. So, but I had been hearing, that is the name I'd been hearing the most when I talk to people about the Bruins head coaching vacancy, who might be a good fit, who makes a lot of sense. I think he's a guy that's in kind of the Bruins circle of things and circle of trust. I think that's somebody that Cam and Donnie would both feel comfortable working with. It's somebody that the Bruins obviously have a past history with, him having coached way back when Jumbo Joe was still here. He coached Patrice Bergeron in his first season. So he knows the terrain here. He's from here. That I think those are all important things. And I think he's part of that sort of like Bruins family of people that they would feel comfortable bringing in. And I think that's kind of an important facet. And in addition to all that, Mike Sullivan's one of the best U.S.-born hockey coaches ever. He's a great hockey coach. He's up there with a lot of the other peers that are in the NHL right now. And I do agree with the tweet that I think him being available is a great sign for the Bruins and a big-time opportunity for them. Obviously, I think the Rangers are going to be interested as well, and that's he's going to have discussions with them as well. And it would feel like those would be the two favorites to potentially land a guy like Mike Sullivan would be the Bruins and the Rangers. Just your thoughts on Sully, him being available, and you and I both having covered him the first time around, how you feel like it might go if there was a redux of Mike Sullivan being the head coach of the Boston Bruins.
Well, Sully's had a very interesting career. His appointment to the Bruins job was a bit of a surprise when Robbie Ftorek was fired with 9 games remaining in the 02-03 season. Mike O'Connell took over the bench, but promoted Mike Sullivan from the Providence Bruins to run that bench.
Yep.
And he was so impressed with Mike Sullivan's work in those 9 remaining regular season plus 5 playoff games against the Devils, the eventual Stanley Cup champion New Jersey Devils, who are being coached by Pat Burns, by the way.
Yep.
That experience superseded the experience question that caused O'Connell to choose Robbie Ftorek ahead of existing assistant coach Peter Laviolette in the fall of 01, the summer of 01. He went with Ftorek on the basis of experience. So when asked by yours truly, what about the experience question this time around? Because now Lavi's had 2 years with the Islanders and was available. So this is the second time Laviolette was available. And O'Connell's answer was the experience he had up close and personal with Mike Sullivan on the bench for those 14 games was the experience that he was focused on and believing that he was the guy. So Sully coaches that year. They go to lockout, and then he's back in the first year where the Bruins' chaotic reentry from the lockout with all the changed players and the botched lockout contract strategy and all that stuff. Sully endured his way through that. And I got on his wrong side one day, kind of late in the season. They had a game against the Rangers, and Hal Gill was famous for shutting down Jaromir Jagr. And Jagr won the Pearson, remember that year, the players vote for MVP. And Sully instead put the Mark Stewart, Andrew Ferentz pairing against him, and they went like, I think, -4 and -5. So I asked Sully at the end of after the game, was this a post game? Was this just you want to get these guys experience in this situation? Was this just something you want to do? No, we're trying to win hockey games was the answer. So I decided that I had been BS'd to and wrote an angry column basically identifying Sully as, you are now part of the problem here. You know, and you today, heretofore, you've been the calm amidst the storm. Now you're making decisions that are taking your team right out of games, yada, yada. I remember telling Ryan Nadeau years later, I think Sully, I think he wanted to, I think he was, he acted like he was going to kill me. And Nadeau says to me, I
vaguely remember that.
I think Sully was going to kill you. Anyway, I got a meeting with him like a couple of days later after practice, and we hashed it out, and it's fine. And I never not thought he was an excellent hockey coach.
Yep.
He had spent all those years as John Tortorella's sidekick, and Tortorella is such an intense personality that it really it wound up hurting Sully after a while to have his wagon hitched to Torts. It got to a point where he needed to separate himself and rediscover his own identity and go back to the minors where he coached Wilkes-Barre Scranton. And then was a very similar track to Bruce Cassidy. Had the early experience with the Caps, wound up having to go to the minors, winds up joining the Bruins.
That was what I was going to say, Mick, when you're talking about going through sort of some of the history of Sully, is that he was very young when he was the head coach of the Bruins that first time around. He was a very young man, not too far removed from his playing career. I don't think he was super comfortable talking to the media at that point. I think he's gotten more he's still like a little gruff and a little, he's never going to be magnanimous. He's never going to be one of those like charismatic guys, coaches talking to the media.
He's never going to be Bruce Boudreau.
No, but I think he's much more comfortable now discussing and dissecting games afterwards with the media. Like, I don't think he was at that point. And he almost viewed the media kind of as the enemy, it seemed like to me. Or there was an adversarial thing going on at the beginning of his career, and maybe he almost treated it like he did when he was a player. And I think that's changed. And I think he understands now the media's job, and he also understands like the media is a tool. Let's face it, for coaches and to get their message across, to get certain things across, to get
Pat Burns certainly embraced it,
moving in a different direction. And I think he understands that now. And I just think it's the natural sort of progression of a guy that's experienced everything, a guy that's older and has perspective now and has much more confidence in what he's doing and his role as a head coach and him just being a hockey coach in general. Like, he's the guy that when you do the USA hockey coaching clinic stuff and you get all the certifications, he's the guy that's on the videos showing the drills, going through everything. Like he is one of the poster boys in USA hockey for coaches, and the way it's done right, the way he goes about things, just the success that he's had, the reputation he has now. That's reflected in him coaching Team USA at the Four Nations face-off. I think he's one of the premier coaches, and he's viewed that way, and rightfully so. He won cups in Pittsburgh, and he's had a great run.
Only coach to repeat in the salary cap era.
Yes. So, the resume you can't argue with, and I think he's a much different, better coach, a la, as you mentioned, Bruce Cassidy, if he were to be here the second time around after all of that life and professional experience that he's had from the first time that he was here.
Yeah.
And I think this is honestly the right place at the right time for both Mike Sullivan and the Boston Bruins. This one makes a ton of sense. I think this is the guy that Cam and Donnie want. I think they believe he's the right coach for this team that can get everything back on track next year and can get them going in the right direction. And he's not one of those guys, and I know you like Pierre Laviolette and a lot of people like John Tortorella, but the one thing I will say about coaches like that is it seems like there's a shelf life for those coaches. They come in, they turn things around, they do a really good job, they get things moving in the right direction, but within 2-3 years, whatever it is, it feels like the message is lost and you sort of need to move on to somebody else. And it seems like that's been kind of a consistent thing in the careers of those coaches, great as they are, and they are excellent coaches. Sullivan seems a little different. He seems like a guy that, when he goes someplace, he's there for a while and he's able to sort of maintain that message, maintain relationships, and he's sort of cracked the Rubik's Cube of how to do that as a hockey coach. And that's, I think, another interesting aspect to Sullivan if he comes back to Boston. The one question I have, Mick, is given his resume, given where he is in his career, given what he's accomplished, he's going to command salary. Like, he's going to command a big number for a coach. He's not going to come cheap, and he has other teams that are interested. I think the Rangers are very interested in him. He's probably going to have several teams that are after him. My question becomes, are the Bruins going to be willing to pay that coach what he feels he deserves to coach here, when it seems like oftentimes the coach is somewhere where the Bruins want to have some savings and don't want to spend like they want to or have to spend for the players? And are they going to be willing to go whatever length that Mike Sullivan wants to go to be paid for, like, frankly, the level of accomplishment and where he is in his professional career and what he would expect to be paid? And I think that's going to be the only stumbling block, I think, if both sides want to make it happen. And the other element to it, and some people on Twitter got into this with me a little bit, asking questions about it, is the dynamic with him coaching his son-in-law, Charlie McAvoy, who's married to Mike Sullivan's daughter, and that sort of familial aspect of it, both good and bad. I mean, obviously, I think they're both professionals. I don't think there's going to be issues with him coaching his son-in-law. It wasn't an issue in Team USA during the Four Nations, and you can argue that Charlie McAvoy played some of his best hockey playing with his father-in-law as the coach. And maybe this is something else the Bruins have an advantage over other teams, is personally Mike Sullivan, he's a little older now. Maybe he personally wants to live in Massachusetts and wants to live close to his family and his grandkids. And that's part of the consideration, too, for him, both professionally and personally, and something that's working big time in the favor of the Boston Bruins. So, you put all of this into the pot and it makes some very interesting sort of discussion points. But I think a lot of it points to Sullivan, like I said, being the right guy in the right place at the right time that makes so much sense for this particular group of Boston Bruins, especially with the Bruins feeling like they can get back into the playoff picture next year.
A lot of people seem tone deaf to the Bruins' repeated statements that they're not planning on sitting out. This is not going to be we'll see you in the playoffs in 3 years, we think.
No.
That's not how they're
They feel
doing
like
this.
they've got the core group to be back in the playoffs next year if they make the right moves this offseason.
That's right. And so that needs to be understood. Any other thing they do needs to be understood in the context of their intentions, not the court of public opinion. So this is why the Sullivan hire always was on my radar from the moment Monty was dismissed. I felt like the clock was on Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh. I think one thing in the interview process that either Don Sweeney or Chris Drury are not doing themselves a favor if they don't get Mike to talk about why the Pittsburgh Penguins missed the playoffs his last 3 years there. And I mean, how many times do we hear them talk about what a great leader Sidney Crosby is, and when you see a guy working that hard, then you know that everybody else, you better be pulling the rope too.
Yep.
If that's all true, and I'm not suggesting that it's not, then you got the coach, you got the captain, an all-time great player who's still doing it at an advanced age, and you still got two other core pieces of their championships, and you have a pretty decent revolving cast around them. Obviously not everything that it was when they got that great infusion from their American League team back when 16, when they won the thing. And, they weren't able to keep it together. That happens all the time. But the fact that they were the retools, you get your new GM, and finally he says, yeah, this isn't going anywhere. I need to get myself a new coach. Wow. That's now granted. No coaching gig lasts forever. It was a hell of a decade, and he accomplished something unique in the salary cap era, as far as I am concerned. That said, that needs to be a discussion point. If I'm the Bruins or the Rangers, I want to know, in Sully's opinion, candidly, between them and any fly on the wall, what exactly happened, because that should not have happened. 3 years out of the playoffs for the last 3 years of Sidney Crosby's career. I would want to really know that. I don't think we're going to get an answer. I just think that, that's going to stay private and by the book, if anybody ever writes it.
Yeah. And I think, the obvious answer, Mick, watching what the Penguins are doing, is that they were, rather than really seriously retooling, they were trying to add veteran pieces to what was already there for an aging core that is definitely, like, they're similar to the Bruins.
A little like the late 90s Rangers.
Yeah, and then rather than, like, make some tough decisions with some of those core guys and retool the right way, they were just trying to add on pieces like Erik Karlsson that did not fit well and were aging as well. And I just think they look like an old team. That was a
huge mistake.
Oh, they look like an old team.
I couldn't believe it when they decided to do it. I was like, oh no, you got to be kidding me. I can't believe they did this.
Yeah.
Because that's such a gamble. It's kind of like, okay, you need that to go perfectly well. And I know what happens if it does, but the chances of it going that well are really low.
Well, especially with older players, in a young man's league, you need a combo of young guys and old guys, and they just went old.
I love watching Erik Karlsson play, but he's been irrelevant for a long time.
No, and you could see, like, the anger on Sidney Crosby's face. Was it last year when they traded Jake Guentzel, and it was clear they weren't going to re-sign him? Like, you could tell that there's not agreement with the best player in the world with some of the decisions that are being made with that team, and what Wonder Boy, what's his name is, Dubas is doing with that team now. And we'll see. Maybe he's going to start making the right decisions and, retooling the right way and making the hard decisions. But it's also like the thing with Fenway Sports Group owning that team. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on beyond, like, Mike Sullivan's coaching end of it with that Pittsburgh Penguins team. I feel like when I watch them and look at them having not made the playoffs, it feels like, and maybe some of this is Celtic City and watching that documentary, which has been very good on HBO Max. But it's like the Celtics, the '80s Larry Bird Celtics, when they kept those guys together and ran them into the ground instead of trading them, and kept trying to recreate the magic from when they won a couple of
If they
championships. And
played
that
those
seems like,
final, they would have won 3 more if they got to play the final in December.
yeah,
But
but
by,
that's, I mean,
the
that's
time March came around, they were
yep.
they were toast.
Yeah, and they didn't have enough bench depth either to back off some of the best players that they had. And I think there's a similar thing going on where after they won the cups, they kept trying to keep thinking the special sauce was going to keep going with that group if they could just add a couple pieces, and it wasn't. When they get to a certain age, you need to supplement them with talented youthful players in that league, and they just don't do it. And they went all offense and not enough defense, I feel like, with that team too. I think that's part of the problem as well.
I think that's what makes the Charlie Coyle acquisition by Don Sweeney so brilliant.
Yeah,
because he was able to get him on a very favorable trade and have him take a lot of the heavy lifting and D-zone starts from Bergeron and Krejci and lighten their load so that they could use their genius to propel the offense and in better favorable matchups now that they were getting into the meat of their 30s. And that really kept the Bruins in a good place for years. Unfortunately, the whole thing is kaput now. But I think Malkin was so in and out of the lineup, and it just seemed to me like, and it also seemed like it got to a point where Crosby, it's kind of like he just didn't seem to be as physical a player as he was in the years that they won the cup in 16 and 17. I just felt like he kind of brought his game back from being, he was like a tennis player that always holds serve, but never comes close to breaking serve except maybe once a match. He got back to being a crash bang, carrying the puck through traffic, and I challenge you to take it from me kind of player in those years that they won the cup. And I think he was really energized by the youth that came into that team and that infusion.
Yeah.
But that, of course, they couldn't keep that team together. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's just that 1, 2, 3, you're out, and you're thinking, wow, that's just it's wonderful that Sydney had Crosby had the 4 Nations, and you got another Olympics ahead of them. But what now with that core is another question I have, because if Dubas, got to be wondering what he's thinking. So
yeah, no.
So yeah, I'm on board that I think the Bruins are always gonna hold on here and wait and see what happened in Pittsburgh before they made any decisions. That was always going to be the deal once Monty was fired.
I feel pretty comfortable in saying that I think that Sullivan is the Bruins' number one option, number one preference of who they would like to be their next head coach. And I feel like it's given all the family factors and all that he's from here, and that, frankly, it would be a great challenge for him to come back and try to win a cup with the Bruins after, not being able to do it the first time around. I'm sure that's something that professionally is attractive to him as well, but just the personal side of it too. I think it makes so much sense for him that the Bruins would be one of the top options, if not the top option, to come full circle and come back to this, franchise. And I just think it makes a ton of sense. It makes way more sense than, Jay Pandolfo, like some of these other names of people that you've heard tossed around that are kind of hope things. He's not going to be interested in that job right now. I don't, it doesn't make any sense. Even if it's more money, even if it's an original 6, all that stuff. And a lot of the college coaches, I feel like the inexperienced college coaches, I don't know if this is the right time to come in with this particular group of Bruins and what they feel like, what management feels like they're capable of. Dropping an inexperienced college hockey coach with no real NHL pedigree into that is not, I think, going to be putting them in a position to succeed right out of the gate, where it would be better with a younger group. I think if it was a younger up and coming group, a lot of prospects, a lot of guys you could sort of groom and develop, that's a little bit of a different story. I think with the team that they have coming back, the cast of characters that they have coming back, I think you're going to need somebody that's been around the NHL rodeo for a while and understand how it works and how to deal with veteran players and how to, have a strong presence in a dressing room. And I think Sullivan has all that, obviously, with the players that he's coached in Pittsburgh and the experience that he brings to the table.
He fits any scenario. That's the thing.
And the general
there isn't
skill,
any scenario that a team wouldn't feel good about him being the coach.
Totally, 100%. But I think it's especially true with, a team that feels like they're going to be able to bounce back next year, feels like they're going to be in the playoffs, feels like it's going to be a veteran group leading them. McAvoy, Pasternak, Hampus Lindholm, Morgan Geekie, Swayman, etc. All right. Let's take a break, Mick, from the action and talk about game time. With the final stretch for the Bruins and the NBA, the Bruins are over. With the NBA playoffs right around the corner, now is the time to dig into the Game Time Ticket app. The app is super easy to use and has tons of great features for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and all kinds of tickets. And we're talking NBA playoffs tickets. We're talking Boston Celtics tickets. We're talking a long playoff run for the Celtics expected. And these are great games. This first round series against the Orlando Magic has been very entertaining. Good basketball. Game Time has some great features. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% when buying last minute tickets through Game Time. Priority Game Time has a feature called Game Time Picks, which filters out the fluff. It only gives you good deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. All in pricing, you toggle this feature and it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You can't get much better than 110% of the difference. All right, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Today's super deal is Tuesday, April 29th. Celtics versus Magic, Game 5. Loge, floor 14, row C for $334. By the way, I saw balcony seats for under $150 on their amazing deals as well. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. For those of you listening to this episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, enjoying all of this hockey talk, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the Bruins Rinkside YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Bruins content with fellow Bruins talkers like Conor Ryan and Evan Marinofski. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new Pucks with Haggs podcast video drops on the interwebs. All right, Mick, back to the action. Let me ask you a question. Did you go to Springfield for that game 2 of the Providence Bruins?
I did not.
Did you go to game 3?
No, I didn't. I haven't done jack squat. I've been watching on the Flow Hockey channel.
Yeah, well, Flow has been pretty good. I went to game 1, which was a really good game. I've tracked the last couple of games as well. Just sounds like a really good playoff series was had, like where the Bruins got continually better as the series was going on, and then finally they broke through and they had 3 or 4 goals in the third period of game 3 and things finally broke open for them.
They didn't score an even strength goal till Riley Tufte's insurance goal in game 3. Although game 1, they outshot him, I think 40-15. Well,
and they outshot them in game 3 too. Like they controlled, I feel like the series.
Yeah, they kind of won. They won going away. Yeah.
Yeah, and but Springfield played them tough. They had a really good goalie. This was the first playoff series that the Providence Bruins have won since I think like 2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this was a big deal for the P-Bruins.
Colton Ellis, he played really well.
They were doing it in front of, Don Sweeney's been there, Evan Gold has been there, Jamie Langenbrunner has been there, Adam McQuaid has been there.
Mm-hmm.
A large Bruins front office and management contingent has been at all these games watching what's going on with the Providence Bruins in this series. So them getting to the second round against the Charlotte Checkers. Series starts Friday in Providence. First 2 games in Providence, the final 3 in Charlotte. A big deal and really a really good sign, I feel like, for the draft development sort of argument that the Bruins are, starting to get their footing back, get better at it, making the right decisions. And the one at the center of this for me, like, look, Riley Tufte and Vinny Lettieri have been two of the big scorers for the Providence Bruins.
Lettieri overtime saved their season.
Yep, Vinny Lettieri had the huge overtime goal in Game 2. It was a scoreless game, and he scores in overtime on a rebound. But that's to be expected, right? Like, you kind of expect if a team's going to have a long playoff run in the AHL, they're going to have veterans, those veteran-type players that have NHL experience that are going to step up and be, like, good players on that team. Riley Tufte, I've watched him in the playoffs. It's the best I saw him play all season. I know he's been a little bit better down in Providence. Certainly he's a lot better down there than he was in Boston. And I think that's the level for him is where he's playing right now. Vinny Lettieri, I liked him in Boston at times. I thought he was effective, maybe not consistently, but showed flashes, and you could see why he's had good stretches and good pockets in the NHL. A very good player in the AHL. And it's fun watching him, Patrick Brown, and Jeffrey Veal play together as a line. Just like veteran NHL guys, they play with an edge. They play like with a lot of confidence in the AHL. Like, they draw a lot of water, you can tell. Like, they feel like they can set the tone and really dictate things.
I would put Pitlick in that class too.
Yeah, Pitlick is one of those guys too, for sure. But all that being said, Matt Poitras, 2 goals in Game 3. Huge goal in the early going of that game. I think they're both power play goals. Very big performance in a big moment. I thought he was very good in Game 1 as well. Like, he's been really good in these playoff games. Playing with Don's Luchmelis and Lettieri. He plays with them as well. I think he's been excellent. It completely backs up and confirms the decision that the Bruins made to leave him in Providence over the second half of the year, to really get that development time, to build up that confidence, to get his game where it needs to be. And you feel like watching him play right now at 21 years old in these AHL playoffs, and the level of effectiveness that he has right now, that he's going to be an impact guy for the Bruins next year. He is going to make the NHL team. He's in a great spot to do that, to be a top 9 forward, top 9 center potentially, and to really claim his spot next year and going beyond with what he's doing right now. Like, some people will say, for a player, like, yeah, he's doing it at the AHL level because he couldn't do it at the NHL level. He's got like the 7th most points of anybody in his draft class, the 7th most points, NHL points, of anybody in his draft year to this point. Like, he has been a very good player based on his age and experience level and where he's at with his peers. And I think what they did with him this year was smart and the right thing to do. And I think it set them up to have him come in and be a player that's going to contribute and help them a lot at the NHL level next year.
There's 2 ways to look at development. I remember back in the 80s, there was a very good high school basketball coach in Rhode Island who did not believe in a kid practicing his jump shot without a hand in the face. Yeah. And my attitude about that was, really? Shouldn't you be able to groove your form independent of that kind of, I mean, if you're trying to build the foundation of your shot predicated on trying to avoid a hand that's in your face, then I don't feel like you're going to get that thing going that makes that when you're under pressure and you got an open look, that you can just rely on that form. Right. That you've cultivated and grooved and practiced thousands and thousands of times, like we all do with our favorite sports. And so to me, I didn't, so I think that for Poitras, being in a slower paced game where he can have more ability to close on guys, to take pucks so he can take pucks. Sometimes he does that in the NHL. He's very sneaky in how he gets up beside somebody and cuts him off and takes the puck away. And then he gets in the NHL and he's in over his head when he's kind of like, okay, do I go right? Do I go left? There's a monster here. There's a monster there. What do I do? And a lot of times he winds up on his knees and the puck's going the other way. At least in the American League, he's got that extra split second to make a play before he gets knocked on his butt. So I just feel like him having this opportunity to play the game, to groove successful trends in his game, to grow his offense in a more forgiving circumstance is going to serve him very well as his skating incrementally improves and as he gets himself a little stronger with each season that goes by, and he gets himself a little grittier. I think that this is all good for him. So I totally agree with you that the AHL was a great situation for him this year. Let's not forget that when Patrice Bergeron was 18 years old in that pre-lockout season that Mike Sullivan coached the Bruins, that he played right wing. And then when he went to the minors for the 04-05 lockout season, which was really the AHL was a 4A league then. I mean, there was some awesome players there. And he moved to center, to his legacy position. So, and then when he came back to Boston to start the 05-06, he actually started the season on right wing again in a depth spot because Joe Thornton was still on the team. When they traded Joe Thornton, they created the line with Bergeron, Brad Boyes, and Marco Sturm, and off they went. And Bergie, I don't think ever played another shift at wing unless it was a, goalie out, 6 men on the ice, and what do we set play kind of thing. So anyway, I like what's going on with Poitras, and I'm just going to toss in there that I am super impressed with Fraser Minton.
Yeah, Fraser Minton had a good series. He is and it's very revealing, I think, the way Don Sweeney spoke about him at the end of season press conference. It's very clear to me that they view him as a Charlie Coyle type player and kind of a replacement for Charlie Coyle. And some of the things that he did and the style of play that he has, and being sort of a big-bodied center that will play two-way hockey, that will back check, that will do a lot of the little things, has great details in his game. Not going to score a ton, but will score enough and will be like a really good complementary player. It was very clear to me listening to Sweeney speak about him that that's kind of how they're viewing Minton at this point. And it really helps, honestly, to have that perspective when you're watching Minton as to what they view him as and what the expectations are for him, and then watch him go out and play and see exactly what they see and what they want him to be and what they're sort of like hoping and shaping him to be. And it makes total sense. But he's a very good player as well. Look, great experience for all those players. And there's a ton, there is Vinny Lettieri, there's Riley Tufte, there's Tyler Pitlick, like you mentioned, there's Patrick Brown. There's a number of Ian Mitchell. There's a number of players that are sort of veteran sort of players that are on that team. But there's also a lot of guys that are going to be with the Boston Bruins in the next couple of years. Fraser Minton, Matt Poitras, Riley Duran. I think Michael Callahan has been their best defenseman. And maybe part of the reason, Mick, that they're not all in on Jokiharju and not really, or sort of, going back and forth on whether they even bring him back, is maybe they want to keep a guy like Michael Callahan and they're not going to be able to pay both players. Maybe there's some consideration there for that. And Michael Callahan has raised his profile enough that they view him as a guy that they want to lock up and keep around for a while and keep as, maybe the seventh defenseman or a potential bottom pairing defenseman. But Frederic Brunet, another player down there.
Yeah, he's going to need more AHL time to build up that body, but he's very clearly a talented player.
Yeah, but the point being, there's a good 5, 6, 7 players on this Providence Bruins team that are going to be in Boston over the next couple of years. Fabian Lysell as well. Merkelov is hurt right now, and it remains to be seen if he's going to be able to come back and play. He didn't play in that first round series, but there's a reason to go watch these players if you're a Bruins fan and you're looking for some playoff
Hell
hockey.
Yeah, and great take. There
is also so much benefit to all of these players playing in these games and going on a long run in this AHL Calder Cup playoffs and getting that experience. And also because the Providence Bruins brass are watching and they get a head start on winning a job next year and helping cement whatever role they might be envisioned for with this management if they go out and play the way that they did. And my point being, Matt Poitras, I think, is one of those guys that's seizing hold of it and saying, I'm one of your guys. Watch me play in these playoffs and watch what I can do. And I think there's other guys that are going to be like that as well. And there's nothing but upside for all these players going out and having a long playoff run in the AHL playoffs.
If they can, and that's that first series was touch and go, and it very easily could have ended in 2 games, and they would not have gotten the experience they're about to get in round 2. So that was a huge, huge victory for the development of the Bruins prospects, of which they now have a pool that will no longer be mocked around the league. I do think that there are legitimate NHL players playing for the Providence Bruins right now, and you just named some of them. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm planning on going to games 1 and 2 Friday, Sunday at the Amp, and give Mark Diver some company. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of company. I know that you now cross promote your colleagues. I hope to see Connor. I hope to see Evan. It'd be great to see.
I can tell you that right now, Mick. It was only me and Mark Diver at game 1.
Yeah. Wow. Where's Mark Allred? Anyway, yeah. So I think that the Providence Bruins have been master class at providing the American Hockey League with a template on how to guarantee a baseline of regular season attendance. They do youth hockey games before, during intermission, and after. And then they have 3 different school classes sing America the Beautiful, God Bless America, and the national anthem. And probably on average, every single one of those kids is a family of 4. And that's how they want. But see, all those promotions go away in the playoffs. You can't plan ahead for how many playoff games you're going to have. And baseball teams they have the same thing happens. You wind up going to the playoffs and the kids go back to school and your stadium's empty for the biggest games of the year. So really, the Bruins fans who are kind of hung over with this sudden end of not having a playoff season for the first time in 10 years, go to Providence. You'll be shocked at how affordable the tickets are. And you get to see guys who are going to play next season for the Boston Bruins from really great vantage points. I mean, come on. Even the parking's cheaper.
Yep. No, I agree. And I would say, to your point about the youth hockey stuff, the Providence Bruins, Finn has played intermission and in the segment prior to the pregame warmups. They offer a bunch of different packages for what you can do as far as skating in Providence around a Providence Bruins game, and it is a great take. It is totally worth the 45-minute drive to go down there. The tickets are cheap. The great part is the pregame skate. I think it's 15 or 20 minutes you get on the ice. The kids can play. The intermission skates are 8 minutes, something like that, which is way longer than the college intermission skates that the kids do around at BC, BU, Northeastern, all that. It's twice as long at least. The other ones are over in a flash when you do the college intermission stuff. And the great part, what I really like that the Providence Bruins do is they will find you somebody to play. It doesn't have to be you scrimmaging your teammates out on the ice. Right. They will actually find somebody that's your level and whoever you want to play against that will be good competition and it will be fun. And they will set up the game, and you can do a full game before the Providence Bruins games start. You can do a 15-minute game before pregame introductions, maybe an hour or so before pregame introductions, or you can do the intermission skate, which was 8 minutes or whatever. They give you a hat. You get great seats for the game. They let the kids run amok during the pregame warmups. They're going down begging for pucks from the players and all that. It is an awesome, great experience. If you are a coach or a team manager for your youth sports hockey team, and to go down there and do the Providence Bruins intermission skates. Great people, great service. Steph Perillo is the name of the woman that runs the whole thing. And shoot her an email, shoot her a text, and get it set up for next season. I've done it before. It's great. I would highly recommend it. So good on you, Mick, for mentioning that. All right, that's it for us this week. I want to thank our sponsors, Mick. Once again, Game Time. With the NBA playoffs right around the corner, now is the time to dig into the Game Time ticket app. The app is super easy to use and has tons of great features for sports, comedy, concerts, theater, and all kinds of other tickets. Right now, you download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Mick, thank you for joining us.
You almost said it. You almost asked me what time is it.
What time is it, Mick?
I could just tell you. Game time.
There you go. All right. Mick, thank you for joining us. Everybody else out there, thank you for listening. We'll see you at the rink.